So we'd like to welcome everybody. We appreciate you taking the time. This has been a very, crazy end of the semester for us. And so as our national partners, you guys have been getting a lot of information about us on the billing, how we've been wrapping up the school year. And so we wanted to start the process of talking about what fall could look like. We know this is going to be changing and kind of a fluid document. But we've got a presentation for everyone, and then using the chat button, if you can do ask your questions when we're done, we'll answer questions, and then we'll be putting together a document that's got everybody's questions and those answers, in addition to making the webinar available to everybody. It will be recorded, and so if you want to be able to share with your local house corporation boards, or you would like us to do something similar or identical to this for your own groups, we're more than happy. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam.
All right, thank you, Shanna, and thank you to all of our partners for being on the call today. And thank you to everyone who's going to be watching this in the future from our website as well. Our goal here today is to really give everybody a great kind of information about where we see food service heading in the post-COVID world, and to answer your questions that you have in regards to that. So I'm going to give you kind of a little bit of an outline of what we're going to be doing and how we're going to move forward in the presentation today. I know that we've heard this a lot, sort of the new normal that we will be under. So we're saying welcome to this new normal when it comes to food service. I think the food service is one of the areas that will be likely impacted by some of the new policies and procedures that we're going to see come out. And our goal is really to stay on the forefront of that. And to inform all of our customers of the information that we have, so that together we can make the most educated decision of how to keep our students safe within your facilities across the country. So we're going to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 impact on food. We're going to talk about some best food handling practices. And then we're going to go into the bulk of our presentation will be on the possible food service changes that may be occurring going into next school year. We're going to go ahead and hit a few frequently asked questions that we've been asked a lot of lately, and then we're going to answer your questions at the end of the webinar. So we're going to try to keep this short and concise to be respectful of your time as well. So kind of jumping right in here on the COVID-19 impact on food. One of the big question marks is COVID-19 a food safety issue? We're all aware of the fact that COVID-19 is a major issue, but the CDC and the USDA are currently reporting that they're not aware that human illnesses can be transmitted by food or food packaging. So they're not seeing that COVID-19 right now is being transmitted through food. So unless that changes, I think that's a good thing for our kitchens, in the sense that this is something that's transferred from human to human, and not necessarily through the food or the food packaging. Another question we received a lot is food imported from other countries or other states who have been, maybe let's say there's a state that's been more highly affected than the state that one of your campuses is on, but food coming from those areas, are we at risk from getting COVID through the transportation and just the stuff being supplied from there? Once again, there's currently no evidence to support the transmission of COVID-19 associated with these imported goods. We don't have any reported cases that we're aware of right now of COVID-19 in the United States that originated from receiving food from an infected area. So I think another good sign on the food is that we shouldn't necessarily have a huge concern from that front. Another question that we've received a lot is, can you get infected with COVID-19 by touching food packaging, or food surfaces? The current data is telling us that there is not evidence for food or food packaging being associated to being with the transmission of COVID-19. The coronaviruses, they really need a living host, so an animal or a human, in order to grow. And so food is not going to provide that for them, for that virus. Now, one thing to keep in consideration, though, I know this from my personal quarantine experience at home. My wife likes to leave packages out on the front doorstep for 24 hours before we bring them in from Amazon or wherever they're coming from. I think the same could be true for some of the packaging and surfaces. If we have packages, surfaces, things like that that are infected with the COVID, obviously you could be infected with COVID by coming in contact with those surfaces. So it's going to be really important as we talk through the presentation today about how we plan on sanitizing and moving forward in that direction. If an employee, a kitchen employee, is infected with COVID-19, would the food that employee produced be safe to eat, or food produced from that facility then be safe to eat? We're starting to see this happen a lot in restaurants that are open for curbside or other ways of dining with limited dining. We are starting to see some food service workers that are being infected with COVID-19 and starting to get some best practices and sort of how to deal with that and how to move forward. For us, food personnel who are ill with COVID-19 will be excluded from work activities that would create an unsanitary condition. So I think that, removing that employee right away is going to be an important piece until they've gone through that quarantine process and have tested that they're no longer positive for COVID-19. I will tell you this, though, there's no evidence currently to support the transmission of the virus directly by eating food that might inadvertently have been contaminated with a virus. So let's say someone who has COVID-19 produces a dish, puts it in the oven at 350 degrees. When that comes out of the oven, it gets put on a buffet line and is served to a member. Right now, we don't believe that there's any evidence to support that virus can live through that cooking process. But I think for the safety of everyone, it'll be important whether or not you use us as your provider or your independent, that you make sure that those employees are removed from the production of food until it's safe. Talking a little bit about the best practices for food handling. The great part about this is that really we're talking about just the normal good hygiene and food safety practices. There's not a whole lot that really we should necessarily be adding to what we've always been doing or what your expectations should have been from your own staff to always be doing. And so those types of things need to continue. In addition, some of the things that we would highlight is making sure that we're purchasing our food from reputable sources. All of the reputable sources of food, your broadline distributors, they're all going to have preparations in check for COVID-19 and making sure that their employees are safe. And so as long as you're purchasing from those reputable vendors, your food should be safe. Cooking food thoroughly and maintaining safe holding temperatures. I think that the idea that we want to make sure that we cook food thoroughly to make sure that any virus is being killed off if there was anything, that's super important. And obviously want to cook the food thoroughly prior to COVID-19 as well. Using good personal hygiene, just making sure that your standards on this are high, and then cleaning and sanitizing surfaces and equipment. I think that we're going to see an increase in the sanitization efforts and equipment, cleaning efforts. Also, an added emphasis on ServSafe certification. I can't talk to this on today's date, but I know that ServSafe has been offering complimentary ServSafe certification courses online during this COVID crisis. So if you have employees that would benefit from ServSafe certification, now is a great time to connect with ServSafe and try to get that certification. All of our head chefs that work for us do carry the ServSafe certification for their kitchens, which in many health departments is already regulated, but we're going to expect that a lot of health departments are going to increase that as well. So the potential food service changes that we're going to see are going to be dictated by the following sources. The government organizations such as the CDC, the FDA, the USDA, they're going to be coming out with guidelines that are going to be then followed by local health departments. We have seen that local health departments are going to have the ability in many cases to create their own sets of guidelines. So just because the CDC says that something is okay, your local health department may have a more stringent expectation of our kitchens on a particular campus. We then fall down to the university regulations. So once again, our expectation is that most universities will follow the government and local health department regulations at a minimum, but we also need to be aware if they decide that they want to add anything to those lists as well to keep their students safe. We, of course, have the national and international fraternity and sorority organizations. We need to be aware of what regulations a individual fraternity and sorority group may put on how food service is handled. And lastly, any local boards or advisors may have a unique take on how they plan to handle things on their level. I think one thing that's very important that we want everyone to know from this call today is that Upper Crust Food Service does not have any plans to create our own policies. What our goal is that we want to take the policies that are in place and we want to let you know about those policies. And then we want to take the lead from our customer. So at the end of the day, we want for you to work with us to determine what of these procedures do you want to be following. Obviously, we're going to follow the basic, required procedures, but above and beyond those things, we're going to take our lead from you, the customer, and that's how we will proceed. So I'm getting ready to go through some things that are going to be food service changes, possible changes for next year that we're hearing, and all of these are based on three things, and those are the idea of social distancing is guiding a lot of these changes. Extensive cleaning and sanitizing, that idea is guiding a lot of this, and then concern with multiple contact platforms, and that means things like self-service buffets and salad bars. So these three areas are really the areas that are guiding a lot of the changes that we're seeing or potential changes we're seeing for food service going into next school year. So starting off, I think the big question on everyone's mind is, will buffet service be eliminated? The self-service buffets and salad bars, depending on your local jurisdictions and university rules and regulations, they may not be approved. We are hoping that they will be. This is an efficient, fantastic way to serve our members. And if we can do it in a safe manner, we would love to continue to provide the buffet experience for a lot of these meals. But we are going to have to be aware that we have to have some backup plans if a university or local health department says no buffet. And so what we've come up with is three options that we feel like are going to be great options if that is the case. The first option will be staffing the buffet. So sort of a staffed buffet service. As you can see from the photo here, that would be someone from our staff on one side of the buffet, the students moving through the other side of the buffet, and we are basically building the plate for them. And so they're telling us what they would like. We're doing that. We're going through the salad bar. Maybe we have one person at the hotline. We have another employee at the salad bar. And we're basically building these plates for the students just like they would on their own. One thing I like about this is it will increase the interaction between our staff and the student. But obviously, some of the downside is it's going to slow down some of the service. So one of the things we may need to think about is, do we need to extend some of our meal times, and do we just need to manage the expectations of the students that getting dinner may take an extra 15 or 20 minutes to get through line now if we have to move to this. The big thing driving this is the elimination of the contamination of the utensils. So that's really what we're hearing from a lot of health departments, is they don't like one student using a scoop to get the rice, setting it back down and having another student use that same scoop for the rice and then go and consume their meal. This would also allow our staff to monitor social distancing in the buffet lines if that's something that that is of concern to you and that you want monitored. The second way that we could potentially see this evolving is packaging food in individual containers. If buffets are completely eliminated, if they say, we don't even care if your staff serves them, we're not going to allow an open air buffet, then we're going to move to packaging food in individual containers as an option. And you can see here, here's a meal that's been created. It's been packaged in individual containers. Those containers would have to be closed up. We're looking at some different options. So, obviously you have styrofoam containers. There's also some clear takeout containers where students could see what the contents of the containers were more easily without having to touch them and open them. So we're looking into a lot of options like that. It's possible, and we're looking at this through our app, is if this is a requirement, that maybe we can do some possible like pre-ordering for customization. So for instance, if we're having a certain meal and we're having carrots, glazed carrots as a side, and a student says, man, that'll ruin my meal if those glazed carrots are in that box, then through the app, our goal would be that they would be able to tell us, hey, I want a meal tonight, but I don't want the glazed carrots. And then we could write their name on that box, set that in a special part of the buffet where maybe the customized orders are. And they could, take the time to find their name and grab their box. We also feel like a lot of composed salads and side options. If we have to go to this, if we have to get rid of our salad bar, we need to be creative with some really great composed salads, pasta salads, all different kinds of things like that that can be extra sides so that these students still feel like they have a lot of variety when they go through. So that would kind of be the second option. The third option is an option that works well for some of our chapters that don't have as large of a population. So without kind of pigeonholing ourselves into an exact amount, I would say, chapters maybe that have 75 or less members, somewhere in that range, doing a made-to-order menu is an option that would eliminate the buffet. This works especially well at lunch, where we have maybe a window of 11 to 1 o'clock, as opposed to just a 1 hour window for dinner. And basically what happens with this is we create a predetermined menu with the chapter of multiple items that can be ordered for, let's say, a lunch period. And so they may have 10 different items that are available to them every day. And then those items could change once a month or once every few weeks if we needed to add some variety. But a student could come down and say, hey, I would love to have a cheeseburger today. And maybe we have, fries, we have chips, we have fresh fruit. We have some options for them for sides as well. And maybe it's grabbing some of those composed salads, things like that as additional sides. So the only thing to consider when you do this is that it does slow down service. Now, we actually already offer this made-to-order lunch service for many of our fraternity chapters around the country. And it's very, very popular, and it goes over very, very well. So I think that this is something that could be a good option. I think where this could be difficult is when we get down into some of our southern schools maybe that have 300 members coming through for lunch. That could pose a problem if we're looking at made to order. So I think that's something we just need to consider on a case-by-case basis. But these three options, I think, are going to be the best three options for the alternative to the buffet. And once again, only if we're forced to do that or you guys feel like that's in the best interest of your members. The next item is that it's probably likely going to be a best practice to limit the access to the kitchen, limiting that to the food service professionals, as well as maybe a designated person from your house, whether that's the house director or the president or the house manager, but really kind of trying to limit that the exposure to the kitchen so that we can keep the food and the products and the supplies and the employees as safe as possible. Most of our groups already have these types of policies in place, but this is a great time to reinforce those policies going in next school year. On beverages, we are seeing some changes to beverages. A lot of what we're hearing is that beverages will likely, a best practice would be to transition from bulk beverages to individually packaged beverages. So in this example, we take the big nice milk machine, and we replace that with cartoned milk as a sort of a PC individual milk somebody could grab. This is going to be something, I think, a decision that needs to be made on the local level as to whether or not you want to do this or whether or not it's mandated. But this is certainly something that
Adam froze. Okay. You froze on us, Adam.
Oh, okay. Am I back again?
You are.
Okay. Sorry about that. So we're seeing that in our snack programs as well. So these bulk snack containers that we may have seen in the past, where a student can, stick a scoop down in the goldfish and pour it into their cup or their bag. Those types of things likely should be replaced for individual packages of goldfish. And so if you have a bulk snack program, we may want to consider moving that to individually packaged snacks to be in better compliance with what likely will be coming down the pipeline. Kind of moving on, additional kind of snack program changes here. A lot of our houses have 24/7 kitchens. And these 24/7 kitchens oftentimes include items from the students, where they're buying these at a grocery store or and bringing them in. And so I think it's going to be really important that we let our members know that we really should only have individually packaged foods inside the 24/7 kitchen. So what we're trying to avoid here, I think, is going to be students who, have something that they've cooked, they've put saran wrap over it, but it's still, they've eaten it and it's already touched them, and now, they're back putting this back in where everybody else can touch it. So I think having individually packed foods, if they're bringing in themselves, is going to be important. Some of our houses who have requested bulk leftover containers in the past, where if we have mashed potatoes left over from a meal, those get put in a large container that students have access to. That's likely a practice that needs to evolve into not necessarily having bulk containers, but maybe having individual containers that students could grab. It's also suggested in the 24/7 kitchen that plates or utensils that are provided there should likely be disposable. We all know that sometimes our students don't do the best job of keeping these kitchenette areas clean. And so the idea of relying on them to use reusable
Adam?
difficult.
Adam, you're kind of freezing.
So I think maybe we should disposable there.
Adam?
Yes.
Okay,
You guys hear me?
Yeah, you froze. Boy, the Columbia, Missouri must have terrible internet.
We have terrible internet here. Okay, so now you'll just have to bear with me. I was on our Wi-Fi and now I'm plugged directly in, so I'm going to have to just turn my head to read my screen now. So I apologize in advance for that. As we look at late plate changes, we don't really see any major changes to late plates because these are already individually packaged. The only thing would be these bulk leftovers is really the main change to late plates. Our app already allows customization of late plates, and so I think that's going to be a really great feature that we'll be able to continue, where students will be able to use the app to get a very customized late plate. And I would expect for us to have a big increase in late plate usage going into next school year. Another potential food service change is disposable versus dishware. One thing that we're looking at here is that it's suggested that all meals are going to be served with single-use plates and utensils. This is something that we believe may be on some health departments' minds. And so this is something we need to kind of be thinking about. If we're allowed to use real items, which I think is the preference of everybody, it's a higher quality product perception-wise, and certainly less costly for us to do the dishes that way. We need to make sure that all of our dishwasher chemicals, dishwasher is working properly, just to make sure that that area of our kitchen is really up to snuff. You know, the dish area is oftentimes an area of the kitchen that we find can be overlooked at times. And so we may just want this summer to go through and make sure that our dishwasher's in an optimal performance mode. We should also have a consideration be made for possible increases in disposable and chemical costs. So if a health department says everything has to be individually packaged, then we need to start looking at what is the cost of that going to be. So for instance, someone who's on a 15 meal plan, if we had to package every single one of their items in a disposable container, that would likely add about $25 per member per semester to their cost, to your costs, just to be able to provide that container for every single meal. So just something to kind of consider when it comes to your budgets. Moving to some frequently asked questions, and then we'll get into some of the questions that you folks have been able to ask here today. First question here, will UCFS employees be screened for COVID-19? To answer that, we do have a procedure that we have developed and put in place that will screen employees for the common symptoms of COVID-19. Any employee showing these symptoms, we will have not working in the facility until those symptoms subside. And like we covered earlier, anyone who would test positive for COVID-19 would not be able to return to work until they had tested that they were no longer positive and they were cleared of the disease. Does UCFS have access to CDC and EPA approved cleaning products? This is something that our procurement manager is working on currently. And so we have reached out to all of our suppliers. We have been able to secure both EPA and CDC approved cleaning products and chemicals for the kitchens, as well as things like sanitizing stations, hand sanitizers, things that you guys can use in the rest of your house as well. I know there's also been a lot of runs on things like toilet paper and paper towels and just interesting things that have gone out of stock due to this pandemic. And so what we are going to do, and we will provide to each of you, is an order guide of all those items that are available through us. One suggestion that we would have, if you decided that you wanted to order those, is to order those early, so that we can all kind of get ahead of the big school rush. We're suggesting placing that order sooner rather than later. And we're also looking to maybe partner with some of the management companies that are out there to be able to offer this through them to the customers as well, or to their clients, so that hopefully we can help the Greek world as much as possible in securing some of these important things. This would also include some of the personal protection equipment like masks and gloves and things like that that you may want to have just available within your property. What is happening with the food supply chain? This is kind of a hot button item. I actually heard the CEO of Tyson today, said that meat is the new toilet paper, in terms of the fact that now we're looking at a shortage on meat, but toilet paper seems to be restocked in all the grocery stores. What we're hearing from our suppliers right now is that there could be some weird things like this that happen going into next school year, just based on factories being shut down temporarily for COVID-19 outbreaks. But what we're hearing right now, specifically like on the meat, is that within the next 8 weeks, they believe that meat production will be back to 100%. And really within the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be back up to 70 or 80% of what it was before. So we're hoping that this is a short-term blip on the meat, but there may be something else that comes up next year. So we're going to ask for some flexibility from our customers if certain items become difficult to obtain. Will the UCFS staff be wearing masks? The answer to this is yes. We do believe that, at least for the near term, that masks are going to be the new glove in terms of perception, right? I think that people are going to want to see staff wearing masks, and we are prepared to provide those to our staff so that they are safe and so that your members feel safe as well. A big question we're getting right now, is pricing going to increase with COVID-19? Currently, we don't expect to see pricing increases due to COVID-19. We've kind of talked about a couple of the factors that could play into some slight auxiliary cost increases, like disposables. If your campus had to go to that, individually packaging every meal, that would certainly be an increase. It wouldn't actually be an increase in your food costs, but just kind of some of those auxiliary costs. And we'd be happy to do a breakdown for you of expectations for that so that you can budget. And then we may see some things on our end as a company where maybe meat prices increase or things like that happen. But in terms of your contracted price, that's one of the benefits of being with a food service company, is that those are our headaches. Those are things that we are going to deal with, and not you. So we do not plan on having any sort of increases for you, beyond what your normal contract calls for in terms of your normal contracted pricing. Can we add additional meals to the meal plan? This is kind of an interesting one, but we've been asked this quite a bit. And people are saying, hey, if we can control the environment in our own kitchen, and our students and our members are really comfortable with that, and our parents are really, really comfortable with that, then does that put us in a position where maybe we should increase the amount of meals that we serve so that we don't have parents that feel like their kids are out at restaurants that are not safe? Things like that. If you're in that position, we're happy to talk to you about that. One of the big driving factors, of course, on price with that is when we talk about staffing the extra hours and being in overtime hours for our staff, or maybe even potentially hiring another cook to cover those extra periods. So keep in mind that these types of changes would come at a cost difference, but it'd be certainly something we'd be willing to weigh with you and allow you to present to your members. So I know that you have submitted questions through the chat button, and I'm going to allow Shanna to kind of start asking those questions, and we'll see if we can do our best to answer anything that hasn't been covered in today's presentation.
So one of the questions was, would the cost of the manned buffet service increase, likely have an increase since more staff would be needed to serve the meals? Would you see a change in that?
Sure. I don't think that we're going to need to see an increase in cost based on that, but I do think we're going to have an increase in flexibility and compassion from the customer, meaning that if the staff that's in the kitchen now has to also come out and serve, we just may have to ask for some patience when it's time to change the pans out, or things of that nature. So we have a plan in place to prepare for this ahead of time, where all of our food is ready to go onto the buffet and be served. But I think that really the only change will not necessarily be cost change, but will just be a change in maybe the amount of time it takes to get through line, and just sort of that coaching up of our members to say, hey, this is a new normal here. So to answer your question, I don't think we'll see an increase in pricing. We just maybe an increase in compassion towards the situation there.
Next one was, won't the individual packaging of snacks and drinks impact the cost structure?
So that if you have a snack plan, typically speaking, most of our houses who have a snack plan are paying for a snack plan above and beyond the normal food service options. And so with that, most of our groups have, just to make something up, let's say they have $250 a week that they've allocated towards snacks. So to answer your question, I think it won't change your price. It just may change slightly how much we're able to deliver for the same price. So if we have to go from bulk goldfish in a large container to individually packed goldfish, and those cost 15% more in the small packs, then we may, you may get 15% less goldfish for the week to get to your $250 budget for snacks for that week. So I think that's probably more likely where we'll see it. But of course, these snack budgets are up to you to change up and down anytime you see fit. So if you wanted to do a slight increase, then we wouldn't have to have any reduction. And there's some items that really won't cost that much more being individually packaged. But we may just want to look at the varieties. And I think we're going to come out with a snack list as well that we can provide of the pre-packaged snacks, so that maybe there's some new snacks that haven't been offered before that will be exciting for the members now that we're moving to kind of more packaged items.
What about the beverage side, going from either jugs of milk or the milk machine to the individual, same with juice?
So for right now, those are going to be costs that Upper Crust Food Service is going to incur. But it's something that we will have to monitor. So I think that if there's any flexibility in this, it needs to be the fact that, we need to be careful that if we're putting out individual containers of beverages, that those beverages aren't just disappearing in bulk and going up to members' rooms in their small refrigerators or things like that, or going to apartment complexes with out-of-house members. I think that's the biggest risk that we have with this is, it's pretty hard to move a 5-gallon bib of milk across town, but it's pretty easy to grab 15 chocolate milk cartons and, throw them in your backpack and take them home. So I think that we just maybe have to have that conversation with the members, and maybe, we have a certain amount of these beverages that we put out to serve for a given meal, and that the rest is kept back in the kitchen, and then those are restocked then for each meal. So that may be one change, but we certainly don't want to pass a cost increase to our customers because of that.
The next one, kind of more of a question statement, but the amount of waste generated will be huge, potentially from food and disposables. I know the late plates, we can do the customization, which does help on some food waste, but dealing with, on a general basis.
Yeah, I agree. I think we will have to make sure, and we do actually have some houses that this may be a concern because of the situation with where do they put their trash. And so, that may be a cost that you may want to look at. If you're a campus that has trash collection once a week and you move to single serve because the health department forces you to do that, and now all of a sudden, instead of, producing 25 bags of trash, we're producing 100 bags of trash a week. That may be something we have to consider is looking at, do we need to have a second pickup now at this location every week? So that's a great point. And certainly we can provide environmentally friendly products. Those are obviously going to cost more. So that's something you need to consider as well, is in this short term, is that important? Is that not important? Does it fit in your budget or not? And those are all options you will have with us. But ultimately, it comes down to what the customer wants to do.
That was the last question. I didn't know if I missed one, or if somebody wants to put it in the chat before we wrap up. Lee has one. I'm going to unmute you, Lee. Wait a minute.
There we go. Sorry. Adam, do you have a commercial source for hand sanitizing dispensers and supplies, as well as face masks?
Yes. So on the list that we're going to send out to everybody of the cleaning products and personal protection equipment that we have access to, both of those items will be listed. So we're going to have the refills, as well as the wall-mounted unit for hand sanitizer, as well as the stand. The stand units as well that you could place at the beginning of the buffet or throughout your house. As well as the masks and things like that. So we will have all those products available should you need them.
Well, because I was thinking maybe we would lay in a touch of inventory and then make them available for purchase by our chapters or from our chapters throughout the house, because they don't know how to obtain it. We don't really know how to obtain
Sure.
those sources. So any help you can give us quickly, we'll get an order in as quickly as we can and make them available, so that when guys are coming back in August, hopefully, assuming that that happens, we'll be ready to go.
Absolutely. We'll have that information out here very shortly. All of our suppliers have been given to the end of this week to get all of that information compiled and to us, so that we can put this all together in one document for everyone to review. So it should just be a matter of days before we have this out to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I know Dio asked a question about, when we anticipate this being finalized. Dio, are you talking on the purchase, the items that we were just talking about, or what food service will look like in the fall?
Well, for me, that's a good question, because we're getting quite a few questions these days, and I assume I'm not the only one, or we're not the only ones, about what happens if schools stay online with their classes in the fall and people don't come back to live in the houses. And my default answer right now is, well, I think if that happens, we're all screwed. So, and I don't have a contingency. I never have. I mean, I guess we could all go back to our banks and ask for forgiveness or forbearance arrangements. But beyond that, our only source of revenue is a fraternity or a sorority living in. And if our guys don't live in, ain't nobody else going to be lining up to take over the lease. So I think it's big trouble if schools don't resume in-person classes.
Yeah.
And just to speak real quickly to that, and I know that everyone on this call is following that closely, but I feel like we're getting encouraging news on that front, in terms of a lot of the major universities are announcing that they're now planning on in-person classes. Of course, we know in this new environment that anything can change at any moment, but certainly fingers crossed along with you. And I think that's a really important part of this, is we just want you to know we know that everybody is suffering together and during these times, that we're not unique or different in that as a provider to you. And our goal is to be a really great partner and work with you all moving forward. That is one other thing I'd like to touch on before we close that I didn't put on a slide, but I think it's important to note, is if we start in-person classes in the fall, and then all of a sudden we have another outbreak and the university decides to close. I know there's been a lot of questions on, well, what happens then to our contract? What do we owe? All those different questions. And so what we want you to know is that, we do not have an expectation. This last time that things closed down, it was a very unique first time situation. If this becomes the norm, then, our staff, it has to be ready to be put into a furlough position. We have to be ready to discard of perishable products, and all of this needs to happen in a quicker time frame than it did this last time, because none of us are able to compensate our vendors for contracts to be, students are going to demand refunds even quicker if this becomes something that happens more often. So we just want everyone to know that is our plan moving forward, would be to be able to close things down as quickly as possible, if that were the case, so that our partners and customers do not have an ongoing expense for food service that's not being provided. So that's a commitment that we can make to you moving forward, is to be very reasonable on that front, so that we are not one of the burdens that you're dealing with when you're looking at a potential another shutdown, which we hope will not happen.
I just want to respond to Dio. So we will have the price list, so to speak, of the cleaning and all that, hopefully within the next week, I think you said, Adam, correct?
Yes.
And then I think from the meal service and how food service will look, right now, most health departments are concerned about opening restaurants. And so having them think about what does food service look like at, the University of Missouri in the fall. They haven't even gone there. So I think what we're trying to say is here's the things that could happen, but we won't know that until probably it gets into July. It's kind of where we're thinking it's going to kind of hit a local health department. Now, if you happen to be in one of those campuses that nobody inspects, well, then I think we're just going to be working with what you want as a client, because we know there's some campuses where no health departments inspect. I did have Adam, there is one more question. Any additional thoughts around buffet service? Because when you're looking at some of these larger campuses of Florida, Mississippi, Arizona, Colorado, Alabama, dinner could take 4 hours. Does a house corporation board need to think about employing hashers, houseboys, et cetera?
Yeah, I think that the large campuses will be an issue if, and our hope would be on the larger campuses, pardon me, that the health department says, hey, go ahead and go with the buffet, but keep things clean, keep things sanitized, have a hand sanitizer station before students go through the buffet line, socially distance them as they go through. Those types of things are a lot easier to manage, right, in a large group than requiring them to only use one side of the buffet now and wait for someone to serve them. So yes, I think that the more people that are serving, the better. So when you talked about the potential and increased cost, I mean, maybe that does in the larger groups look like some hashers or some houseboys or some people like that come to assist our staff to get everybody through that line as quickly as possible. And I think that we will find some best practices as we get going on this, and as we hear from health departments their final verdicts. And we will certainly continue to pass those best practices along to all of you and all of our houses and managers. Along those lines, up here on the screen, we have a website link, uppercrustfoodservice.com/COVID. This will be live at the beginning of next week. And this webinar will be on there, as well as a lot of other documents. So we actually have a post-COVID operational guide that's a PDF that we will send to all of you, but will also be available to download on this page. A lot of really great resources, and anytime something is updated with best practices, things like that, it will be put on this page. So it may be a great page for you to send to your housing corporation boards once it gets up, and we can let you know when it's up so that they know, hey, this is a good resource to go to for kind of up-to-date information on what's happening. But we really appreciate everybody for being on this call. I know that a lot of us are zoomed out, and so we appreciate you joining us anyway here today. We truly do want to be great partners for you and partner together. I will say this, the Greek system, we are a resilient group of people. When you look at the group that comprises us, both the students are the leaders on the campus, right? Every campus we're on, our students are the leaders. Our alumni corporation boards are leaders in their communities. Our national offices do amazing work for charities and for all of their members. And so we have worked together on a lot of things and pulled together on a lot of things in the past. And so I really do believe that we will find a way to all pull together once again as a Greek system and find our way through this unfortunate situation. But I think that hopefully the rest of the campuses can look on the Greek communities, and I think they will, to see, wow, they really led well during this time, and we want to be a part of that with you. So we really thank you for being a part of the webinar today. And any additional questions that you have, please feel free to reach out to myself directly or also to Shanna, and we truly appreciate your partnership. So thank you guys for joining us today.